Welcome to our session with psychology instructor Jenny Farrell. Jenny's going to be talking with us today about effective online teaching strategies. Jenny's been teaching online for more than a dozen years. You got more than a dozen years of online
I
teaching.
got a lot of years, yeah.
She's got some years in there. So we're going to learn from her today. And I know that she's open to asking questions during her session, and also afterwards we'll have some time for questions. So please feel free to pipe up. We are recording this session and I will be making that recording available. So keep that in mind so that you can share that information with your friends and neighbors. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and thank y'all for being here.
I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen and still see you guys in case you have questions. Let's see.
I can watch the chat as well.
Okay, because I'm not the most tech savvy person on the planet. Oh, y'all are on the side. Look at that. Okay. Does it look normal on y'all's end? Okay. All right. So you can definitely interrupt me if you have questions or comments. I don't have to talk for an entire hour by myself. So I have been teaching online for a long time, and the last place I worked at, they actually required training for online learning. So like you couldn't teach online unless you went through, it was pretty much a whole semester of training for teaching online. And then they had very strict parameters for what you could and could not do. And also they would no longer allow you to teach online if your retention levels went too low. So they're really strict about it. So I've just taken essentially the practices from that location and done them in this LMS. So it's the same. So I have in each one of my classes, whether online or not, on the homepage, I put some kind of little clip art for them, which you can make on, was it Canva, for free as an instructor, to a certain extent. And so I try to make something related to the topic. So for general psych, I have a brain and it says psychology in fancy letters. And I try to make sure that I do things up front for them, that they can have as much information as humanly possible at the beginning. I think setting up expectations for how you expect the semester to go is really important. So on the course homepage, I have the syllabus for them, information that like these things are required, like they pop up in our shell. So I have information for how the course works so that they can know up front what's expected in terms of assignments being turned in. I require proctored in-person final exams, so that information's on there for them as well. I put information about myself too. I don't like my photo being all over the internet. I don't know why I'm opposed to it, but I don't like it. So I have pictures of my dogs that they can look at. So it tells them a little bit about myself, some photos of some cute puppy dogs, which are probably going to make noise at some point in the background. And then I have the textbook for them to have a link immediately into it in the class instead of having to do that on their own in whatever way they access it. Information for how to contact IT, how to get Word for free. So all of this is what they see when they get into the homepage initially when the class starts. It seems to be that when you ask students questions about what they want, they have a lot of similar opinions on how they think online classes should go. And Sarah actually shared with me some data that they collected, I think last year, about online learning that they had students respond to. So I didn't go that fancy because I don't have that kind of power. I just put a note in my classes, my face-to-face classes, with little postcards that said, hey, tell me what you think is efficient for online learning. And they actually, the few of them who were brave enough to answer it and hand me back the little sticky, they said pretty much the same things that Sarah and the data that she shared collected. So students want clear instructions and directions, like literally spoon feed them the information. They want to know that they have opportunities to meet with you if they want to, because they don't read the syllabus where you have your office hours. So they want to make sure that you have some way to meet with them if they have questions. They want you to respond to emails. That was one of their biggest complaints, is that they feel ignored in emails. They like having reminders about when things are due and, hey, don't forget this is coming up. They want to see you in the course in some kind of way. One of my students literally wrote out a sentence that said they don't like it when it seems like the class is being taught by a random, like robot run, right? Like they want to know that there's a personality behind it. And then they want assignments that connect to the real world in some kind of way. So they don't just want to regurgitate textbook information. So I took the things that they said and tried to gear this in that direction. So setting up the course homepage with like spoon-fed information, because they're not going to read the syllabus. So if you include things about how the class works in this shell, they'll look at that before they look at the syllabus. I also try to set up my first week really, again, upfront with what's expected for the class and really kind of blunt about it as well. So I have on the first week, especially if it's one of those weird weeks where we have like 2 days and it's not really a whole week for the beginning of the semester, I just make the first week an orientation. They don't have any like assignments in the textbook or anything. It's just, this is how this class will work. Here's what's expected of you. And then I have discussions where they have to agree to policies, so that when they come at me halfway through the semester mad about something, I can point them back to the fact that they knew about this stuff up front. So I have an orientation video. I won't click on it, but it's just me clicking through the class, showing them how the class works. It's only my voice with the screen grab because I don't like to put my face on the internet. So they get to hear me and see me click through things so that they can have a visual for how the class will work for this semester. I chunked the syllabus back in this week as well because, again, they don't look at it. So I put it in more than one location. I also have a little netiquette that they can read. So this is all about what they can and cannot do in my class in terms of talking to one another. Since it's online classes, everything's going to be virtual and they're having discussions as ways to talk to one another. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody that decides to be really rude or say really rude things on discussion boards. So this is a nice way for them to see that there's ground rules for how this course is going to be set up. If they're going to send me emails, don't just tell me you're in my psych class. That's not helpful. I have 6 of them, right? Like you got to tell me who you are. Maybe there's a link that's broken. They really like to tell you when your stuff is broken. So saying, you know, up front, sometimes things don't work, let me know about it. Be respectful, make sure, especially in psych, since we talk about a lot of topics that are controversial, that they can't be talking to one another in offensive ways, because they will try, and sometimes they'll try to pass them off as jokes. So up front, that's not going to be allowed. We're not going to scream and fight in discussion boards. And then make sure, hey, read it out loud before you post it to make sure that nothing's coming across in a way that would be rude. They get that up front on day 1. They also get a nice little page about how to do well in here, which is exactly what we tell them all semester. Like you should keep a calendar, you should stay on top of your assignments, don't wait till the last minute. I don't know how much they take to heart for this particular one, but it's helpful to see it up front that you shouldn't be starting stuff Sunday at midnight when stuff is due Sunday at midnight. So it literally just kind of restates stuff that we tell them every semester in every class. I also tell them about me checking email. I only respond to emails in, I don't do it the LMS little messenger one. I don't like it because you can't reply to it within your emails, and I don't want to check 15 things. So I tell them up front, I'm only going to check my email and that they should send me emails that way. They still try to do the messenger thing, but and then I create a discussion the first week where they have to say that they understand, and I gotta move this little, where they gotta, I don't know if I can click on things now. Oh, there we go. Where they have to understand that this is the content that we went over. It's in the syllabus. I spoon fed it to you in little chunks throughout the first week. And they're going to have to read this statement here and then say that they understand and agree to it at the end. So it includes things like, this is how our weekly assignments work, and they work the same way every week. I don't take late work. I'm not going to take it via email. If you don't turn it in like you're supposed to at the time you're supposed to, I'm not taking it. I added this one this semester because I got sick of bump up my grade for me. I want an A. So I tell them up front, I don't give extra credit assignments. Like whatever your grade is, you earned it. I'm not giving you a bump up. Textbook information, I do a proctored again exam. So information about that, how to contact IT. And then they have to just go down here and say that they read it, they understand, and they agree to it. So this is just a nice way for me to, when they come at me and ask about extra credit, I can say, hey, you understood that there was no extra credit opportunities in here. Yes, you knew there was a proctored exam. If they get mad about it, because this is graded, so they'll do it. And so they have read it at least, or they said they read it, right? And you can use that as a way to tell them that you gave them the information. And then the only other thing in the first week I do is I let them talk about themselves, which you probably do too. So they get to just tell me whatever they want, their hobbies, their interests. Some people will include, like this one right here, photos of their pets, which is cute. So you get to know preferred names, pronouns, information about them, what their degrees are going to be, because sometimes that gears how I do discussion questions. If I got a bunch of nursing students, sometimes I'll do discussion questions that align more with that. So that's a helpful thing to do as well. So this is all just trying to make sure that we're upfront with information. I have study tips for how to effectively space out your studying in the first week. Look at it in the first week, but I'll refer back to it if they ask me questions about how to effectively study in class. And I don't give them any content in the first week. It's really just an orientation and how the class is going to run. So this is trying to set up expectations at the beginning. The rest of the semester, I make sure that my classes are set up the same exact way every single week. Now they have different content in them, but if we poke at the next week, I have this little box that we have at the beginning of every module. That's where I put a checklist, and I just consistently have the same little image of a to-do list. And you can do alt text on this very easily. You put it in, you say it's an image of a to-do list with a pen, and then you got your ADA compliant stuff. And I make literally a checklist where it's numbered with how many things they need to do this week, so they can look at it, plan out from the get-go how much time they think it's going to take them to get through that week's assignments. And I also will give them reminders using this as well. So in my weeks, I try to keep things not looking cluttered, and I literally keep things in the same order. So I always tell them to read whatever chapter it is. I have videos for the week that are supplemental, because I'm not always making my own videos describing content. Sometimes they get to watch YouTube videos instead. I have the PowerPoints next. Then I have any assignment that they need to do. And I end my week with a summary of what they should take away from this week's content, like why they're learning it, essentially. And this week I have a short little lecture of myself talking about correlations, because none of them understand correlations. Usually it freaks them out, but it's only about 5 minutes long. They're not going to listen to hour-long lecture videos, but they will listen to ones that are under like 10 minutes. So if there's longer ones, I try to keep it around the 10-minute mark, because you can go in on the back end and see what they're looking at, and they know out of hour-long videos pretty quickly. They don't have the time to look through that. So this is pretty much how every single one of my weeks is set up. It's the same little image. It's, do these things. Here's your assignments that you have for the week, discussions. I also, when I provide supplemental videos, I made a cute little popcorn now showing image that I have on every video's page as well. I tell them why they're watching it. Like, it's not helpful to just throw a bunch of YouTube videos at them where they're not supposed to understand what they're going to take away from it. So I literally tell them what their takeaway should be and why I'm assigning that video for them to watch supplementally. If it's a video, because sometimes, especially in my world, we might have videos or topics about things like suicide or sexual assault, or murder when we get to like psychological disorders. So I'll put trigger warnings and tell them, hey, this is stuff that's discussed in this video, or this is what is covered, because they don't have to watch them necessarily. And if that would be too much for them to handle, at least they know about it up front and they don't find out halfway through the video that something disturbing is going to be talked about or looked over. So again, this is consistently every week. This is how their class looks, obviously with just different content within it. And this helps them stay on top of, what to expect. And it also makes it really easy for me to look at and keep track of. I like the fact that it's really simple and there's not a lot of clutter on it. And so it's easy to manage. Let's see what else we got. I also make sure that I consistently have my discussions functioning the same way every week. So to try to encourage them to do the work ahead of time, have set up on all of my discussions that their initial post has to be due Friday at midnight, which is, I tell them repeatedly at the beginning of the semester, and then they just get used to it. I only take a few points off if their initial post is late, but this allows the people that want to do the work and go to bed before midnight on Sunday to have people to reply to. In the semesters where I haven't done this, they all wait until 11 o'clock at night on Sunday to do an initial post, which irritates half the class because they have no one to talk to. So in all of my discussions, they have the fact that they have to have their initial post in Friday by midnight. I put like the rules for how many people they need to reply to, what they need to, in terms of sentence length, how many they need in order to get full credit for their post. I'm going to next semester make all of my discussions Q&A. I found this semester that whoever posts first, everybody else just regurgitates in different words exactly what that person said, which bothers me. So the Q&A forums, they don't get to see anyone else's post until they make one. But then you'll get emails about, I can't get into this forum, I can't see anybody else's. So I always put on there that it can take up to 10 minutes for my courses to register that, so that I don't get to see emails about I posted, but now I can't see anybody's stuff. So there's quite often a delay. So every Friday at midnight, they have a discussion post usually, that's due, and that stays consistent. All my due dates are always Sunday at midnight for everything, with initial posts for discussions being Friday at midnight. And that keeps it nice and concise, and they know exactly what to expect every single week. They also really want information spoon-fed to them. I have noticed the last few semesters giving them just a research paper prompt and having them go off and do it, they don't seem to be able to do. They need examples of like sample papers. Sometimes they just want you to read the discussion prompt to them in a video, right? So sometimes having somebody tell it to them clicks in their brains for some reason. So I try to provide as much information about, like, especially writing assignments, up front, so that I get less emails and concerns, and they can look through the information if they want to and get more of an understanding of what's expected. So for example, let's see, I think this is the right one. So I have my general psych class, they have to go to the news like CNN or Fox News, and they have to find an article that they can relate to class, and they have to do that in specific ways. So if they just read the prompt by themselves, they freak out. I get 1,000 emails about, I don't know what to do. So I provide them a nice little sample for them to click on, where they can see a past student's paper. This is literally one written by a student who did well. And I say, hey, can I use your paper? They always say yes. So I take their name off. I take any personal things they might have said off of it. And then they have a nice sample to look at, see what's expected for the assignment. And that stops most emails in terms of confusion about what you expect for the assignment. So it takes a little work on your end, but it goes a long way in stopping a lot of the headache for the confusion that they might have about a topic. I do the same thing in my developmental psych class. They had a really big research paper that was due, and it's a big chunk of their grades. So they're of course very anxious about it. So I've given them as well, like the style guide for how to use APA. I encourage them to go to the SSC. I have a sample research paper, a past person's paper for them to look at. And this semester, to combat AI, because It's really bad. I had them do an appendix where they have to submit their highlighted sources so that I know they actually did the research. And that really freaked them out in terms of what I was looking for and what to submit. So 2 days into that week, I got so many emails, I made a video. So I put a video up and made a course announcement that, hey, there's now this video because y'all are all concerned about how this appendix works. And I looked the next day and almost every single one of them had looked at it. So they were all confused and only some of them were brave enough to ask me questions about it. So by putting a nice video up, and if they sent emails, I could say, hey, I just posted a video, go watch that. They were all able to successfully turn in their appendix without a problem. And they all did it correctly, even though this is the first time I've ever done that. So it's literally spoon feeding them information. It's really helpful. It helps stop a lot of the emails and stops the ones from being confused who are just going to be silent about it and not do the work because they're confused about it.
Hey, Jenny, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You're, it's so clean.
It is.
As somebody who loves that, let me tell you, that's like goals.
Right.
One of the things that you're doing that I've never done, so I'm hoping maybe you would just talk a little bit about it.
Sure.
It seems like you're dumping a lot of stuff into the pages.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about how you do that? Because I've never done, I like never thought about that.
So what I do is if I'm gonna, sometimes I do just give them a PDF, like this one's just scanned. But for this one, I think it's just because I want to tell them the why for it. So if I just posted a video, they might not, it'll just be a link, right? And it won't be why they need to watch it. So I use the Google Drive a lot. So I'll make short little videos, put it into Google Drive, and then they have to click on the link to view it. I can also like shut it down if I need to halfway through the semester. So any little videos I make, I tend to make in page form, so that they have an understanding as to why they need to watch it and then the links there for them. And I do the same thing for like example papers usually too, so that they can understand what exactly I'm looking for and then see a visual for it. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think that's an easier way to think
absolutely.
about it.
I just never considered that, but it actually really does make it look really clean because you even could put like multiple things.
Yes, you can.
So I'll have like 5 videos on the same topic and I've got video, 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 or I'll put it all into a YouTube playlist. But then sometimes I want to switch out what videos they're got.
Right.
So just dumping it all into a page seems like it's going to make it a lot more efficient.
And you could obviously do the links within the page without having to use your drive. I tend to chunk everything in the drive for some reason. So that's where it all lives, so I can access it whenever I want to. So I probably also do it to stop things from being cluttered, and make them click on it. Yeah. Let's see, what else do I have? I also have discussions where I ask them questions because we do have on our homepages, all of us, this little student discussion forum. They don't ever use it. And sometimes I forget to subscribe to it. So if they did comment in it, I don't know that they put a comment. So if there's something big coming up, I did this for
Hey,
research
this is
papers for
Michelle.
all of my
I've
classes.
got a quick question.
Yes.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to ask about Nisha's first week. I was trying different approaches, but it seems like nothing was working. And this spring was really focused on practicing how to use the modes, really, really important. But it didn't really explain the syllabus. And I was like reading it, it was there. And it seemed pretty good, but, keep on me, oh, I forgot my homework. It's still under like a high school student, and that was a little frustrating about like doing it nice enough, just to verify. Coming to class every week, yes, but keep forgetting, explain like every week, like the syllabus, and the student just don't feel like it's focused. How to read and understand maybe short points or sign something, but they weren't following that. And I'm just not really sure a different way how to do that.
Okay, so I teach in the high schools too. And I give them a printout, which I think you've also gotten, where they have all these guidelines and they got to sign it and say that they understood the syllabus. I guess you can't make them read it, or they're always probably going to use an argument to say that they didn't know that X, Y, and Z was required. They always have that out. But I think maybe if this is really what you're asking, that it's a lot easier to try to, in the at least the first week of class, put it somewhere, state it multiple times. So I'll, in the first week of class, first few weeks of class, in my announcements reminding them about things, I'll put a little thing about, don't forget, I do not take late work in here. If it's not submitted by this time, you're not getting any points for it. So I try to hit them up front really bluntly in the first few weeks of class that this is how it's going to go.
Yeah,
You
I
can
do
send
as
me
well.
an
Yeah, say
email.
many times, like you're saying. Yep, many times.
Yep, many times. And they'll still try it. Like I had a high school kid in the high schools who the last week of class asked me if he could turn all the stuff in from the beginning of the semester. And I told him no. And he said, but that sucks. I was like, it does, but that's the rules, right? Like, so I think making sure you're sticking with
Wow.
it
Yep.
and making sure, at least for your peace of mind, that you've thrown all of this at them in every way imaginable. And it's not on you if they don't read it, or they try to argue about it. If you've done your due diligence of trying up front to tell them all the rules, and I think that's really the best you can do. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll just try. Yep, and just keep going. I know I have one other, like, so I have a previous advice from a mentorship like a long time ago, like in another state. She told me if late is fine, like Site Life, just give like 1 week time frame and allow to submit late for like 1 week. And I thought that kind of worked, and everybody has, life and situations and things that pop up. But then also looking at, it seems like, like homework over the weekends, is that a good thing or is that concerning? Because it is the weekends, that's the kids' time. I'm not really sure how successful weekend homework is. Some kids like to do it on the weekends, some not, and then it gets forgotten.
Right.
Research collected from like surveys and just to kind of see, what students like or what they do.
So for mine, my assignments are always open for an entire week. So they open Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning and they close Sunday at midnight. And they can do their work anytime within that time frame. Now, if it's discussions, their initial posts have to be in there Friday by midnight, but that's 5 days to really quickly type something up in a discussion board. It's not a lot of, I'm not requiring a lot in discussions. So they should be able to find 5 minutes in 5 days to be able to answer a discussion question. And if there is something big, like a research paper, I usually start telling them, hey, don't forget this is coming up at least 2 weeks from when it shows up, because they don't read the syllabus. So they don't look at due dates. And so if it's something big that I know is going to require more time, I give them a heads up a few weeks in advance. But I don't have assignments that are only open for a few days, because you're right, because like some people have children and jobs and lives on the weekend. And so they might want to do their work at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, right? Like, so I always make sure they have at least pretty much a whole week to do any assignments that they have due. So everything is always
Right.
open by 6 a.m. on Monday. Everything always closes Sunday at midnight. In terms of late work, I don't take any. I don't have the brain power.
Yeah.
You do that. So I don't have the brain power for late to keep track of late work. I have 6 classes and sometimes like 150 students, and I can't open things up all the time for them. So I have heard of people giving like a freebie, like you messed up, you made things, you missed a due date. Here's your one freebie, and you put their name for yourself in like a Google Doc so that they use their one freebie. And then the next time they come, because they get in a habit if you let them do that. And they'll come at you later and you'll go, you use your one freebie, right? You could give them, because life happens, a one-time freebie. I usually tell mine, and I'll put it in the syllabus too, that if they let me know ahead of time that something's wrong, I can work with them. But if they tell me 2 days after something closes, then I can't help them. So I give them leeway that way.
Right.
But they have to advocate for themselves, which is hard for some of them to do. So, and then I'm not evil. If somebody's hospitalized, that's a completely different animal. But if they just didn't do a discussion because they couldn't be bothered, that's a little different. So let's see, discussions for like to ask questions. So they don't use the Q&A thing right here. And again, sometimes I don't remember to subscribe to it, to even know that somebody posted there. So if I have scary assignments, then I tend to post within whatever week, either right before it's coming up, like this one, they have a proctored exam next week. So in this particular week here, I asked them to go ahead and let me know if they had any questions. And so I give them information about what's going to happen with the proctored exam. I also have links to the campus maps because they might not know where they're going if they're online students and they have to show up for a test. And then I tell them to ask me any questions that they have. And if they don't have any questions, to say that they don't have any questions, because these are graded because they won't do them otherwise. And so if they don't have any questions and they say they don't, they still get points for it. And so they'll ask all kinds of, really great things about what's expected. Do we get a study guide? How long is it going to take? So this also helps other students who are too shy to ask you a question to see the answers to them. It also stops it from being all up in your email a week before they're doing something big. I have the same exact setup for like the research paper that my upper level psych classes write. Usually a week or two out, I'll post one of these little discussions and they can ask me anything they want. If they're concerned about their topic choice, they can put that in there. So it's a nice way for them to be able to ask you a question directly and have other students, almost like a class discussion, have other students be able to see what the answers are, because odds are they all have the same concerns. So I pepper these in throughout the semester as well, if it's relevant. It's not always relevant. I also try to make sure that my discussions aren't just like academic based. They don't read the textbook. They don't want to read the textbook. They want to see how the class applies out and about in the real world. So sometimes I'll take the orientation discussion where they introduce themselves, and that might decide where I go with discussion questions. Because again, in developmental psych, a lot of them are going to be nurses, or they say they're going to be nurses. So they're interested in that kind of channel of questions or content. This week in my developmental psych class online, we're talking about how they're all going to die, which is a depressing topic. And it's literally what we end with for the semester. And so I could get them to just talk about their feelings about death with dignity and euthanasia, but that's boring. So I give them something to watch and to read. So this is something that was all over the news quite a few years ago now, probably. There was this woman named Brittany Maynard who was young. She had just gotten married and she got diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So it goes against the idea of like your dog or a really old grandma, right, dealing with this kind of situation. So it causes them to think a little bit deeper about it than if I just ask them to talk about euthanasia. And anytime I'm doing topics that are controversial, I make sure I include, hey, we're not going to all feel the same, but that's okay. We're going to be polite. So I remind them repeatedly in these kinds of discussions. And mine are almost always opinion based. So I want them to see that, hey, we learned this in the textbook, but here's where it applies in the real world. And what are your thoughts on it? To try to make it like you would have an organic kind of face-to-face class with conversation. So not all of them agree with this topic, right? So the student, no, should not be legal, right? Other students, it should be, but with parameters. And so they've all been really polite I haven't had any problems in quite a few semesters of them being able to voice their opinions. And sometimes they're super polite in their replies. They're like, I totally see your point of view, but this is how I feel. And thank you for sharing, right? Like they're trying to make sure they can share their opinions. And it seems to be things that are set up front so that they feel safe to say they don't feel the same way as somebody else and still be respectful about other people's opinions. This one for general psych, I had them, when we talked about therapy, instead of doing the route of, do you go to therapy or what kind of therapy would you be interested in? I decided to do music therapy, and I geared it as, hey, do you listen to certain kinds of songs when you're happy or sad? And I want you to use the discussion forum to post a YouTube video. Obviously, it needs to make sure it follows the parameters of education. It can't be dirty. And tell me what songs you listen to when you're happy or sad and why. And then maybe you can make a Spotify playlist of these particular songs. And oh my goodness, do they love to tell you the music they listen to, of which I know none of them, right? So they'll post their little videos. They tell you their feelings around the songs and why they like to listen to it. It's a warm hug, right? Like they really get into this particular discussion topic because they get to display their interests and tell you why they feel that way. And they're really good at, I also love whoever this person is, right? And their music. So it's a really good way to get discussions out of them that isn't just based in whatever content we're talking about in class, but it still applies to the content. So this, I think, helps with the relevance of the class and making sure that they can see how it applies to their day-to-day lives, because sometimes that can be hard to set up in an online class. You also have to make sure that you're participating in things. Students notice when we're not in the classes. They notice when we don't answer emails. They notice when you never pop up in the class, either with videos or, showing your personality in it in some kind of way. They also want to see you in discussion boards. So I am in discussion boards every week. I don't reply to every single student because nobody has time for that. But I do try to do at least 5 or 6 of them. So I set a day for myself where I just go in and see who's posted and reply to things. Or sometimes I'll make my own post. They don't always reply to it. Like for this one, with the music, I went ahead and put, the 2 songs that I listen to. I got to find it though. And then I tell them, my thoughts about, a lot of them post country music, and I tell them that country music hurts me on a cellular level. Like I can't listen to it. So they get to see like aspects of your personality in it. Nobody replied to me, probably because I insulted them with my hating of country music, but at least they get to see your thoughts and opinions on things. In the discussion on euthanasia, I've already been in there this week and I've posted my thoughts, even though I don't agree with some of the students. I tell them, thank you for your point of view, and here's how I feel about it, so they get to see how you feel about particular topics. And you're not just a shell, teaching the class. They are a random, right? As one of my students said, they get to see aspects of your personality in it. So sometimes for the discussions, I'll post silly photos at the top. Like I have a quote from The Princess Bride because I like that movie a lot. And so that's, it's a marriage discussion. So I have the marriage meme on there for them to look at. A lot of them don't get it, but the ones who do find it really entertaining. So they want to see you in the discussion board. I try to make sure that I don't hit the same students every time, because you're always going to have the students that every time make an awesome post, right? But you can't only reply to them. So I try to find sometimes the ones where no student replies are under theirs, and I'll post something, and it can be something just like, that's a really great idea. Thanks for sharing that. It doesn't have to be anything big. And sometimes they'll reply to you. Like if you say something to their post, they'll send you a little post right afterwards. So they notice that you're in there, or if you're not in there, and they definitely appreciate it when you are. I also try to make sure that I stay on top of announcements. I probably over announce, if we're being honest. I send them announcements every Monday about what is due that week. So all I have to do for that is go into any particular week and I just copy this checklist and I put an announcement that says, hey guys, here's what you have due this week. And I do that every Monday morning. And then I send them reminder announcements, because I'm nice, that say on Friday, hey, don't forget, this is something that's due. And this is stuff you can set up literally at the beginning of the semester if you have your whole semester planned out. If you add an announcement, you can set them up to go out at specific times. So sometimes when I send them out on Monday, I go ahead and set up ones to get pushed out on Friday. I don't always do that, but sometimes I do. So you could set these up in advance so that you don't have to worry about it every week. I just sometimes tweak things, and so I don't have them scheduled to go out. So that's a nice way to make sure that you're reminding them, because everybody deserves a reminder about things, especially if we're talking about high school kids. They can barely keep their heads on. So trying to keep track of multiple classes and what's due that week is really hard for them to do. So a nice reminder is helpful. So this gives them a little alert on my courses. It also should shoot to their student email as well. If they check it, they'll get reminders there. Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, do you always do announcements on certain, you said always on Fridays and
I
always,
always do Mondays. Usually as soon as I get into my office. So most of them have agendas for Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning by about that time. And then I usually send out reminders on Friday by like noon, especially since they have to post an initial post by Friday. So I try to give them an additional time as a heads up. I also give them congratulations and announcements. Like on this particular week, nobody was rude. So they did a discussion on anxiety and, hey, are you stressed? What do you use as a technique to help yourself not be stressed? And they were really good in their discussion about, I don't know, giving each other some comfort and some, hey, these are the skills I use. You could use these too. So I sent them an announcement about, you guys did a really good job on this particular discussion topic. I also, because we offer, and I'm psych, we offer a lot of free mental health services on campus and through campus towards the end of the semester, April, when they're all stressed out and barely holding on. I send them an announcement with all the free stuff that we have for them to access for mental health counseling, because I know a lot of them are starting to drown around this time period. So it allows them to know that there's help out there if they would like it. So I use announcements as a way to check in with them. I send them their reminders. I tell them when they're doing good jobs. I remind them about drop dates that are coming up, right? So they get a lot of information via course announcements, which I think is really helpful. And it also serves as a reminder for the people who might have forgot your class exists until Sunday at midnight, that they know, oh yes, I do in fact still have this class, and this is stuff that's due this particular week, which I think they notice as well. The fact that you give them reminders, and that is something they tend to ask for, because the calendar in the LMS is not the best at keeping track of things, or it's just too confusing and they don't understand it. I don't know which way it's really going. And so making sure you're reminding them about it, I think is really helpful. I think that's about all I have though, in terms of how I conduct things in class. So if you guys got burning questions, you can definitely ask them.
I have a question about your checklist,
Yes,
like just the aesthetics of it. The graphic, I'm guessing, is from Canva.
it is. Yeah.
How are you putting that checklist in? Is the checklist part of your Canva thing, or like how are
No,
you doing
so
that?
all I do, like if I click on it, right? So I have it saved as a little picture in my computer. I upload that and then I just type underneath it.
Okay.
That way, if something has to move, I can edit it without having to worry about deleting a photo or anything. But this is the only thing I use this space for, is a nice little picture and then a checklist. Because I know you can put lots of stuff in here, but I try to keep it consistent. Also, if you didn't know, you can highlight weeks so that when they click in the class, it automatically goes into the week where stuff is due. I also have a tendency to hide my upcoming weeks, because sometimes I do move things around, and this was a big problem during the hurricane. Even though I told them everything's moving, none of this is real anymore, they would still like look ahead, because even though classes are hidden, our weeks are hidden, they for some reason can still see this checklist. They just can't see anything that's underneath it. And so they'll read it and then they'll plan a cruise for themselves the next week and then tell you, I looked ahead and there was nothing due, which isn't true. So I hide all the upcoming weeks and I open them up like the night before, which does require more work on my end. But it stops them from being able to peruse things ahead of time and then try to come at you and tell you they plan things looking ahead that you didn't have anything due, which there's something due every week, right? Like that would never be a thing. So I highlight things and then I hide things
And
from them a lot.
you're talking about Canva, sorry. The checklist, and you're saying that you moved that into the course announcements from there.
Yes. So I don't put this
Specifically.
image.
Okay, so what do you do
So all I do,
for that
let's
to-do list?
Yeah, for sure. So all I do is I go into this week. Let's say this is our week. This is what's due. I literally just take this, copy it, and then I go into announcements up here and I'll title it, hey, usually I say whatever week it is, and that this particular thing is due. And then they just have the checklist right there. Like it's copy and pasted from whatever that week's module is. So I'll say, hey, here's your agenda, or if it's Friday, hey, here's your friendly reminder for what's due. And all I gotta do is copy and paste it in there and shoot it out, which is nice and convenient.
The other thing that I like about doing the image separately.
So it'll show here on the Zoom live. Yeah. So as far as like the online class for Zoom, like the checklist right here, you show it there, and then you also do it in the course assignment, course announcement as well too, right?
I do. I put it in both places. And so I have the checklist up there every single week for them to see. So any of the modules that they click on, there's always a checklist for them to look at every single time. And then that's what this right here is what I copy and paste and put in an announcement on Monday morning. Hey, here's your agenda. And then on Friday, hey, here's a reminder. Don't forget these things are due. So all I have to do is copy and paste it, which is convenient.
Okay, yeah, I like to do that same thing, but you know, I still forget. I don't understand. You know,
Yeah, what you got,
it's like
Sarah?
here I have 3. You know, they still forget, but
They do still forget. Again, you can't make them do the work, but I try to give them every opportunity to have been told all week that this is what's due. And I really think that's all you can do. Like, it's not on you if they don't do their work. If you did your due diligence and gave them all the info, gave them pokes and reminders, like it's their own fault if they didn't do it.
yeah, right. Okay.
What you got, Sarah?
So I was just thinking about the way that you do the image and the text separately. From an accessibility standpoint, it makes it way easier. And I don't know if Treadway, if you're thinking about that, because like the alt text for having a image with text in it is a lot more complicated. So this way, you got your little image, you've got your alt text in there for the image, and then the text is underneath, and a screen reader will move through that just fine.
Yeah. And I do tend to use just small amounts of clip art. Like every to-do list looks like this. And then every videos page has the little popcorn and now showing. So it's really easy to make it ADA compliant because it's not overwhelming amount of images everywhere. So it still makes it look cute, I guess, without having you on the back end having to do repeated, you know, alt text to things. So yeah, I tend to use the same images across all my classes too, because it just makes it really
Yeah,
convenient.
yeah, the cheerleader. Yeah, that's cute.
What else we got?
I don't know if you can show what your first week looks like, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure, I can show my first week. So I usually
thank
give
you.
them some kind of welcome banner, which again, I just used off Canva and was free. And the alt text just says, welcome banner, right? Like with bright colors or something like that. And this is the only one where I maybe don't have necessarily a checklist because I want to like greet them to the class. So it'll say hello students, but within that paragraph have what they need to do. And then when I make course announcements, I put it in a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of way so they can keep track of it. I always have a video for how the class works and how to poke around on my courses. I give them the syllabus again, which they're not going to read. Here are the rules for how you're going to conduct yourself in class. Here are ways to do well up front in this particular class. I have the discussion that they have to agree to, that they understand I don't take late work, that I'm not going to bump their grade up, that things are due Sunday at midnight every single week. And they can tell me about themselves. And then I give them a nice little PDF from a conference I went to on how to effectively study. So the first week is just an orientation in every single one of my online classes. I don't give them any content in the first week at all. The content starts on the second week.
Any other questions or comments for Jenny?
Just a comment. It looks really, your class looks really nice.
Oh, thanks. I'd like to take all the credit, but I got trained to make it all nice and blank.
Jenny, can you talk about just a little bit more about your level of participation in the discussion forums?
So I do try to, on the first week, I try my best to reply to all of them and greet them to class, but that can be hard depending on how many online classes you have. And again, every week I'm in the discussion somewhere. So if it's something cutesy like what's your music, then I'll make my own post. I don't always make my own posts. Like in this one, let's see where it is, about euthanasia. I don't make my own post about that one, but I'll go in and I'll reply to them. So this week I got started a little bit early because I knew I want to make sure they're not doing anything they're not supposed to be doing in this discussion. So quite a few of them have already posted things, and I think I've replied to 3 of them already. And I just tell them my thoughts on the subject. I try not to just rephrase the same paragraph over and over. So if they said something interesting, like this kid, for example, said that people are committing suicide in Canada via euthanasia because they have mental illness, which is not true, right? So I fact checked him in my reply and said, nope, turns out that's not a thing. You can quickly look that up. People are not using euthanasia for mental illness in Canada, right? So sometimes I have to come in and make corrections to things. That's something I have to do a lot with certain discussions, but I tend to know about it ahead of time because they tend to pop up with the same responses every semester. I have one on a girl who was horrifically abused in the first few years of life, and they always want to say she has autism, which she doesn't, right? Which is also not relevant to what we're talking about. So I will go in and correct them if I need to, because what happens is one of them reads it and they all go, "Oh, I can't believe that," and they don't look it up themselves. So I don't have a problem correcting them on here, and they don't seem to have a problem being corrected either. At least they don't tell me that they do. So I try to every Friday, that's my day, I have on my calendar reply to discussions, and I will go in and try to at least do 5 or 6 of them. So since their initial post date is Friday, most of them have put something in there by that point. I don't do this at midnight. I do it like when I'm on campus. I go in and I type a few things up, and sometimes it's, this was a really good post. You pointed out something, that nobody else has brought up, or I just give them some kind of encouragement. Sometimes, especially in like the stress related discussions, I tell them that, yeah, college and work and kids, that's overwhelming, right? But you got this, right? So just giving them some kind of encouragement sometimes in the discussions is helpful too. But every week I'm posting something in the discussion boards with them. I don't do it after it closes because they're not going to come back and look at it, right? And so I just picked Fridays for myself. I could do earlier in the week, but there would probably be less people to talk to, and it would probably always be the same 2 students, right? Which I'm trying not to do. So I try to give them 5 days to start typing in it before I show myself in it. Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for being on the call and
Yes, thanks.
hope that you learned something today. Jenny, thank you so much for sharing what you do in your classes and making your courses available to us to kind of poke around. It's
Right.
it's really fun to get to see how other folks set their courses up, and it gives us a lot to think about and how we might choose to revise our own course design. So we really appreciate it.